Good evening, everyone. Welcome to College and Careers, our transition booster session tonight. We're going to give everyone a few more minutes to join. While we're waiting, I'll give everyone a few updates and information. If you could please turn your cameras off and mute yourselves during the presentation, we appreciate that. My name is Amy Clausen. I'm the Family Support Specialist here in Northeast Ohio, and I work with Ohio Family to Family. This is our last transition booster session of the year, and it is titled College and Careers. We're going to learn tonight about how to plan for your child. And while we wait for more people to join the session, we're going to continue on and learn more resources. One of the resources I wanted to share with you all is about Ohio Family to Family. There are 3 of us here in Ohio. We're all family support specialists. We each have children with special health care needs who support other parents so they do not have to make the journey alone. Ohio Family to Family provides free one-on-one support to families across the state. That can involve helping them with navigating healthcare systems and settings, access to community resources, transitioning to adult care services and providers, and much more. We also present free trainings for families and professionals, just like tonight's session. And we engage in advocacy efforts regarding policies that impact children and youth with special health care needs. Please connect with us on our website and Facebook page to learn more about our work and to find some more helpful resources. Sorry, I forgot to move the slide across. Here's that slide. You'll all get this information we're sharing tonight. It will be posted on our website. Another resource that Ohio Family to Family has is our Parent to Parent program. It's a statewide matching program that matches parents, families, and caregivers who have a person with a disability or special health care need, and we match them to referred parents. So referred parents are those who want to connect with another person for support in dealing with a new diagnosis or challenges with the family, just navigating life or learning how to handle transition to adulthood. If you're interested in being matched or in becoming a support parent, please reach out to Jenna, listed here on the slide. And of course, tonight's session is our very successful transition booster session. And it's because of the planning team that I work with. I have the amazing opportunity to work with all of these organizations listed on this slide. And I want to thank each and every one of them who, sort of give their time and energy and support toward tonight and other future booster sessions. And I'm announcing tonight on behalf of our planning team that we are going to host a Transition Expo in 2023. And as you can see, it is for families and transition age youth with disabilities, families, caregivers, and professionals in Northeast Ohio to come and learn about transition to adulthood. While we're not ready yet to announce all the details, we do want to make sure that you know that it will be in person at the Independence Civic Center. And stay tuned for more information. We'll be shouting it out across the bow. So we do know that there are a lot of parents and professionals from around the state on this call tonight. And so for that reason, if you want to contact Ohio Family to Family after tonight's session, you can certainly contact me if you live in the Northern Ohio area, or my colleagues in Southern and Central Ohio. We're always happy to help in any way, shape, or form. And don't forget, we're free, so there's no charge for our services. We do hope that you enjoy the information and you take advantage of the experts that are here with us tonight. They've agreed to volunteer their time and spend their evening with us tonight as well. Please also remember to keep your camera and sound off. And please be mindful, we are recording this session, so it will be available to you to review again later on when you need to see it again or when others need to see it. So throughout the presentation, we want you to hold your questions or just pop your questions into the chat for the speakers to address later at the end. And don't forget to please complete our evaluation, very important to us. At the end of the session, we'll send that out in a link in the chat. So at this point, I am going to stop my share and I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful speakers, Amy Harker and Bob Ross.
Thank you, Amy. I am so excited to be here and see all the wonderful parents that are so interested in their child's educational journey and getting them ready for what they do, what's next, right? Whatever comes after their high school graduation. And so Bob and I are going to be co-presenting and we're going to be giving you, on my part, I'm going to be giving you that 30,000 foot view so that you can understand the new graduation requirements. I like to call it a choose your own adventure because it's not just your standard go to classes, get your grades, pass the test, and get your diploma now. There's some different alternatives that are available, and I want to make sure that we give you that general overview. And then Bob's expertise and the special education pieces, he's going to jump into that. Again, my name's Amy Harker, and a little bit about my background. I spent 19 years as a teacher and then moved into administration as a special ed director and spent my time 17 years doing that with a few of the school districts in Northeast Ohio. I have then just been working as a personalized learning specialist for the state of Ohio. There are 10 of them that was selected this year, and it's a new role for me. So I've been excited to be a part of that personalized learning movement in Ohio. We have a couple slides here that are next, Bob, that show you just how to connect with us. Our websites, Bob is from the SST, which is the state support team, and I'm from the ESC of Northeast Ohio. And those are our websites and our Twitter followings for our organizations. And the next slide shows my information on how to contact me. I have the QR codes there too, if you want to follow me on either Twitter or LinkedIn. And then if you're interested in what personalized learning is, we do have a website for that as well. So when we're looking at graduation requirements, I wanted to kind of give you that overall picture of what's happened in the state recently and give you that background. And it's always nice when we start with the why. So here you can see that we're really focused in Ohio on student-centered systems. And we want to make sure that every one of our students across Ohio are graduating and ready for that what next steps. And so with everything changing, I just had two new granddaughters born, and it kind of startled me when I started thinking about what their graduating class is going to be and what does that mean for them. And so, there are going to be jobs that exist that for our littler guys that they're, that don't even exist now. So we have to prepare them for a changing workplace. So you can see this, and I'm not going to go into all this detail, but Ohio does have a strategic plan, and we've been working on it for some time now. But I'm going to really hone in on that burgundy rectangle. And you'll see that it says one goal. And our one goal is Ohio will increase annually the percentage of its high school graduates who will graduate 1 year. And after 1 year after graduation, they will be either enrolled and succeeding in a post-high school learning experience, serving in a military, which means enlisted. They will be earning a living wage in a career of their choice, and then engaged in meaningful self-sustaining vocation or being an entrepreneur. So as we guide you through tonight, I wanted to give you 3 examples, and these are just made up students: Dante Harris, Eli Richard, Michelle Jones. We have graduation plans that our students across Ohio have available to them in each of their schools. Now, when your student's on an IEP, some school districts will be incorporating their graduation plan right in their IEP. They make it part of their transition plan, and then in the PLOP, or the present levels of performance, they'll be putting some of their goals and so forth to ensure that the students are looking from the 7th grade on as to where they might want to be when they graduate. So these 3 students, Dante, Eli, and Michelle, are a variety of students. They could be on an IEP or they could not. It doesn't matter, but we'll see how they change throughout the time. And so Dante is going to be, and he wants his interest, and every student should know and be able to speak to what their career interest is. And if they are not, then the teachers and their support system should be working with them to try to identify what that is. And so they each should set up a career goal, and that's part of the transition plan. So Dante plans to attend a state university studying mechanical engineering. Eli wants to graduate high school with a diploma and earn 12 industry point credential. And we're talking a little bit about that, and it's for STNA. So he wants to become a student nurse assistant that works in hospitals. And that's a licensed program. And then Michelle wants to pursue a career in the Air Force. So one of them going to be enlisted. So going through that, this is like the beginning part of the graduation plan. And we'll be talking about them a little as we go through. So you're going to hear different words as you work with your school districts. One of them might be success plans, graduation plan. You might have an RTI plan. That's now changing over to the MTSS system. So you might hear both of those. And then of course you have your IEP and your 504 systems that your child are on. So this is probably one of the most important slides here to give you the general overview of what our graduation requirements are. There are going to be your general course requirements, which is kind of that standard thing we all went through, taking the courses that are required and getting those units that get us to graduation. The second part is demonstration of a competency. And the third part is demonstration of readiness. So keep this picture of these 3 buckets in mind, because as we go through, I'm going to be talking about each of those and how your child's going to progress. So you can see here, the state requires that there are 20 credits given, and schools sometimes will require more. And that's a local decision. So there are schools around our area that do require more than 20 credits. So whatever high school they go to, you want to check out their number of credits. And so you can see then, so that was just the courses. That second picture, the second bucket, is the demonstration of competency. Most of the time, most of the students will get through by passing their Algebra 1 and their English language arts. And those are the cut scores you see there at 684. So if they pass those tests, there's nothing more they have to do to demonstrate competency. But let's say they don't pass either one or both of those tests, then there's some alternatives, and you see those down below. They can take a College Credit Plus course that's equivalent and pass that test, or they might get a military enlistment. They might go through a career readiness alternative, or they could take the ACT and SAT and get a remediation-free score, which gives them a fourth way to pass. Now I have a highlighted area up on this slide. That's for anybody who's transferring. So it's a little note. So if your child is transferring schools in their senior year, there are some special things that they can go through there. Okay, next slide. So there are some state changes. And so you can see that there are end of course tests now, and they are algebra, geometry, English language arts 2, biology, American government, and American history. So all students going through must take those tests unless they, during your IEP meeting, they might be made exempt, but they've had to take them at least one time and then retaken them. I believe, Bob, you might want to clarify that, retake them one time. Is that correct?
Yeah, remediation and then retake. But no one says they can't do more remediation and take it as many times as they want, but at least one time from the retake.
And then one of the other things that has been happening too, when we talked about course requirements, is that some of those things are starting to change around mathematics, where all students were required to take Algebra 2. Now they're going to allow students to pick from a list of different math courses that would match particularly to different careers, which I think is a wonderful addition that they've just added, because that Algebra 2 was not always for everyone. And so another alternative for that competency, that second bucket, is the College Credit Plus. And we're just going to kind of go through these kind of quickly, Bob, because I've kind of mentioned all of them. But College Credit Plus, you can see the next one is military. And what does it need? The test is an ASVAB that they must take. And so that they would have to score 50 on that in order to get into the military program that they would like to. And then the next slide, I have a link in here. You'll be getting these slides at the end. And I gave a link so that if anything that you want more information on, just so that if you wanted to know what the military requirements are, it takes you to those links and you can click on those on your own. Next. Career readiness. Now, when we get down to this career readiness component, there is a retake requirement on those the Algebra 1 and the English. And then once they've retaken it, then they can go into select this career alternative. And you can see that there are WebEx exams, there are 12-point industry credentials. There's a, remember the student that was going to get the STNA licensure, that's also picking a program that has a license as an outcome, or entering into a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship program in Ohio. There is a site that you can go through if you are interested in getting your child into a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship program, and that's called Apprentice Ohio. And that's a great place to go to see what kinds of things are available for students. And getting them enrolled into that is one of those foundational demonstrations. They have to have two, one foundational, one supporting, or two foundational. The supporting demonstration then they would go out and they would actually work in a community environment for 250 hours, or they might earn a workforce readiness score, which is currently 14 on the Work Keys exam. And then Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more, but you'll notice that the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal is located here under the competency, and it's also located under our next bucket, which if you have your child work through the Ohio Means Job Readiness Seal, which both Bob and I will be talking about, I call it a twofer. So they could get a credit for their career readiness, and they could get credit for their the third bucket, which is the the competency and the readiness. So Next slide. The last one of the 4 alternatives is getting that remediation-free score on English, language arts, and mathematics. And currently those are the cut scores, 18 in English and reading, 22 in math, 22. And then the SATs. So look, the SATs are 480 and 530, but remember Eli, that one of our sample students, let's take a look at his graduation plan. This would be the next section of it. And it says, what did he do in algebra and what did he do in English? Well, it looks like his English is fine and he doesn't have to do anything more because he passed the test. However, he didn't pass the algebra 1, and then he didn't pass the second retest. So there has to be something in place for him. He could continue to try to retake that test, but we want to make sure that he's ready for graduation. So in order to do that, we want to make sure that he's involved in some kind of program of one of those 4 alternatives that we talked about. In this case, Eli is going to be enrolled into a licensure program for STNA. And when he finishes that, he does not have to worry about that Algebra 1 exam again. Next. All right. So again, this is those 3 buckets. I put it here just to remind you what they are. We talked about the course requirements. We talked about demonstration of competency. The next slide is now the demonstration of readiness. So every student in the state of Ohio now has to earn 2 seals. And so one of those has to be a state identified seal and the other one can be local, or they can do 2 state identified seals. I'm going to go through just quickly what those seals are. And remember how I said that the Ohio Means Readiness Seal was one of those. So if they earn the readiness seal, which I'm going to be talking about in more detail, they will have filled a part of their competency and they will fulfill one of their readiness seals. Next. All right, so you can see that these are the seals that are available. And we're going to just quickly go through and talk about what it takes to get a seal. And I'm going to stop and talk mostly about industry credentials and Ohio Means jobs in case your child is one of those that have difficulty passing that test for either math or English. So we've talked about military as an alternative to the competency. It's also a seal that can be earned. So if they do enroll in military, they would earn a seal and they would get a credit toward their competency mark. Next. Okay, so the industry recognized credential. A lot of high schools now, including the career centers, are putting more and more industry recognized credential features into their regular programming. So if you are interested in this, you would go to your school and ask them what industry recognized credential programs are available that you could get your child involved in. They have to be a part of and earn 12 points toward that. And there are several things that can be done, and many school districts are setting these up to help students to be supported as to have that alternative. And so you see the STNA is an industry recognized credential if you pass 75 hours, and there is a test that has to be taken at the end of that. All right, next. And this is the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. If you haven't heard of this, this is the seal that I've been talking about. That is that twofer. It can go for competency and it can go for readiness. So what has to happen? First of all, there is a link in our slideshow that you can go to get there. If not, go to the Ohio Department of Education and just put in the search bar the readiness seal, and it will come up with all the information about it. But there are 15 identified professional skills on this, and the students work toward attaining a proficiency mark in each of those 15 areas. In order to be complete, though, they have to do that. They have to have a mentor, 3 of them, and they have to have it in 2 of 3 environments. So they could pick a mentor from the community. They could pick it where they're doing some work or transition planning, or they could have a mentor that's actually in the school. So they have to have 3 mentors, and then a minimum of two different environments. So they can't get it all at school. They can't get it all at their work environment. They can't get it all out in the community. Something like a Boy Scout leader could be that community mentor. So next, this link right here is the one I was talking about. You can click on that and it will take you to the site, and it gives you a lot of plethora of information. Next one. And these are the 15 categories. These are all the kind of things that keep students hired into a job. So we want to make sure that they have things like reliability and work ethic and leadership skills and creativity. And you will find that a lot of schools are thinking about and doing more work on intentionally teaching these kinds of things within the classroom so that those skill sets are being built throughout their educational journey. Next. This is an example of just a portion of the rubric that's available. And so if you go down the criteria, this is the three skills that are highlighted here are punctuality,
Discipline and
discipline.
teamwork.
Thank you. Discipline and teamwork collaboration. And it goes from expert to beginner. And you'll see that they only have to match the column under proficiency in order to gain that particular skill. And the person that's marking that is the mentor that they're working with. And if they get to the proficient level, then they earn that whole seal. And then they also can earn that toward their competency score. Next. All right. The other one is a college ready. If your child's going on to be college ready, Bob's going to talk a little bit about college preparedness. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's some ACT and SAT scores that have to be earned to get that seal. Next. There's a technology seal, and each of these have options that you can earn it. And you can see that it's a B and a College Credit Plus course, or an advanced placement course, or an IB course, or meeting a course that meets the guidelines under Ohio Department of Education. So it leaves that open for some local decision. And then citizenship, there's quite a few things that can be done here, you know, obtaining the score on the test, getting the letter grade. And then you'll notice at the very bottom that a student who is on the alternative assessment, if they earn a 457 on that alternative assessment, they can also earn the citizenship. That's a hard one to say, citizenship seal. All right, next. And then a science, the same kind of thing where the student on the IEP can earn a 430 that's on the alternative assessment. So those are the students with the most significant cognitive disabilities would be able to earn that score fairly quickly by getting that. And then we have a biliteracy seal. If your child happens to already be ELL with English as their second language, the biliteracy seal is one of those that if they can pass the score in English and they can also pass it in their home language, that is another way that they can earn a different seal. Next. All right, and there's a lot of requirements that they would have to do, but you can see, I'll let you read through those on your own, but there's two different avenues that they have to go in order to earn the English proficiency and foreign language proficiency. Next. All right, the honors diploma, there's a variety of different ones that are available, but they have to earn one of the 6. So it could be academic, career tech. I'm seeing more and more students getting that career tech diploma, IB, a STEM diploma. If your child's talented in the arts and doing the arts honors, and then civics or social studies is another way to earn the honors seal. All right, so demonstration of readiness. So I just finished telling you about all the state seals. There are 3 that they can earn at the local level, and there are 3: fine and performing arts, community service, and student engagement. They only have to earn 2 seals, remember. One of them has to be state, and one of them could be local, or they could earn 2 state. And those requirements are local decisions at each of your schools. All right, going on to the next one. Next slide. All right, so you remember our students, Dante, Eli, and Michelle. You can see how they finished out. So Eli's been the one that we've been following through that was earning those industry recognized credentials. You see he's got his 20 credits. He got competency by earning a 12-point industry recognized credential to get his STNA. He earned that Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal, and notice it's also down in his readiness component too, because he earned it. He gets to put it in 2 places. He, because he did the STNA, he gets an industry recognized credential, and then he also worked on his community service. Did he have to do all 3 of those? No, he only needed 2, but what we wanted to make sure, you know, a lot of students are earning many more seals than just the 2, but 2 are required. And you can see that throughout the whole process, he knew he was going to go into STNA, and everything that he did in high school directed him toward that. And so that's what we want to try to help all of our students do, is to pick that pathway they want to get on and help them figure out what's the best alternative plan for them should they not get that testing component done through the traditional means. Next. All right, so these are things that we've already talked about. These just happen to be the, I took all the updates that just have recently happened in the last probably 6 months, and I put them all on one page, and I've addressed them all, but I just put them all in one place so that you could see that. So next, I'm going to introduce to you my colleague, Bob Ross, and he's going to go into a little deeper detail on how the graduation requirements apply to students with disabilities.
All right, thanks, Amy. I think you did a fantastic job of breaking down those new graduation requirements. So as Amy said, my name is Bob Ross. I work as a consultant at State Support Team Region 3, and the 2 areas that I primarily specialize in are career technical education and secondary transition. I am a retired career tech administrator. I recognize some names here on our call tonight, some colleagues, and you might remember I was the principal at the Cuyahoga East Vocational Education Consortium. So what I'm going to do is talk about where Ohio is as far as graduation and students with disabilities, and then talk about transition planning, because transition planning is really the foundation for students on IEPs, students with IEPs, to be prepared for whatever it is that is their post-secondary goal in education, in employment, and in independent living. So the slide that you see here, I know it's a little hard to read, but basically what this is that Ohio, I teach a class at Cleveland State, and I shared this slide with my students. And what this represents is where Ohio is. We're that red line down here at the end. This is the percentage of students with IEPs who graduate by the standard requirements. And as you can see, Ohio, as my students said, Ohio has a problem. Right now, we are in the lower end of the continuum of the different states and territories, where only 58.23% of our students with IEPs, and the stat is from the 1920 school year, have graduated by these standard requirements. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Ohio, as a state, as my students said, Ohio has a problem. Federal regulations, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, basically oversees each state and gives each state a designation. And Ohio is in what's called needs assistance. And the main reason is because we are not graduating enough of our students with IEPs by the standard requirements. So we're currently in a 5-year cycle where the goal has been set, as you can see from this slide, that by the 25-26 graduating class, Ohio wants to see 70% of their students with IEPs graduate by standard requirements, which I would say is probably still a low bar. I think that we should be shooting for a lot higher than 70%, but that is an improvement from where we currently are now with 58%. The other slide that really shows that Ohio needs to do some work as far as how we are serving our students with disabilities is that 16.3% of students with IEPs, and again, this is from the 1920 school year, drop out of school. There are targets that have been set for that as well. And the target, I believe, is 13%, which is still, again, I think the bar is raised or is a little bit, too low for that. So what Ohio is doing is making a very concerted effort to see that more of our students with disabilities graduate with a regular diploma, fewer students with disabilities drop out, and that more students with disabilities are ready for that one goal, as Amy had talked about before in our strategic plan. So the big shift in education, not just for students with disabilities, but for all students, isn't just about getting a diploma. It's about getting a diploma, but also being ready for whatever that next step is in their life. So graduating by standard requirements, what does that mean? So these are some of the reasons why a student with an IEP may not graduate by standard requirements. First one is that their IEP goals have been used to meet the curricular requirements. The second is that if they take the alternate assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities, they will not graduate by the standard requirements. And the third one is if they have been exempted from the consequences of not passing those tests. Now, I want to make a point that we're talking about federal graduation rates. So if a student takes alternate assessment, or if they are excused from the consequences of not passing that ELA 2 and Algebra 1 class, and they don't demonstrate competency through an alternate mean, they will still receive an Ohio diploma. They will count for the Ohio graduation rate, but the federal graduation rate is what is the reason why Ohio is in need assistance. The diploma looks the same as any other diploma. Ohio is a single diploma state. So our goal is to try to find ways to get more of our students with disabilities to graduate by those standard requirements, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So the foundation of preparing students with disabilities for life after high school is the transition, the secondary transition planning process. And I know that some of our parents and guardians that are here with us tonight, your children may be 14 years or older. And so this secondary transition process may not be something new to you, but I'm going to talk briefly about what does good secondary transition planning look like. So we're going to start with transition is not. Well, as you can see from this slide, it's not a solo activity. It's not short-sighted. It is done with the student. It is done with the parent. It is not just the responsibility of special education. We need to remember that students with disabilities are general education students first. Then they might need some specially designed instruction, but they are general education students first that need some extra help and extra support, in whether it's academic or behavior, mobility, a variety of different things. Transition is not just the responsibility of special education. It's not a school-only endeavor, meaning that for some students, having linkages with adult service agencies like our county boards of developmental disabilities or opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, they are partners in the transition process. Transition is not planned based on guesses. It's not predetermined. It's not a compliance activity to say, okay, we did it. It's not a one size fits all. The reason it's called an individual education plan is because it's individualized, and that includes transition planning. It is not set in stone. Transition planning is meant to be fluid, because if it starts at age 14 and a student stays in school, if the IEP determines that for some students they're going to stay in school through their 22nd birthday, that transition plan is going to change, because a 14-year-old and a 22-year-old might have a lot different ideas about what it is that they want to do after high school. And it's not based on a deficit mindset. It's based on the mindset that we can be successful in employment, education and training, and independent living. So just quickly here, in Ohio, transition starts at age 14. So the IEP that the student turns 14 is when transition planning needs to become a part of that IEP. Transition plans are done annually. It's part of the IEP. It's section 5, and I'll show that to you in a little bit. It is a team sport. It is data driven, and the term age appropriate transition assessments, or AATA, is very important, because that's the data that we collect, whether it's at school, whether it's with you, the parents and guardians, to get information about the student, to decide what are their preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. PINs, in other words. So it's very person-centered. It's outcome-oriented, and it's based on a backwards planning approach. So typically, when you are talking transition, you can see from this slide, these are some of the folks that may be part of that team. It doesn't mean that everyone that you see here is going to be. There are some that have to be there. And the reason the student is in black, is bold, is because the student has to be at the center of all of the planning and needs to be an active team member with transition planning. This graphic, I think, illustrates pretty nicely the flow of how transition is supposed to work. So starting at the top, you can see we have our age-appropriate transition assessments. These are done annually, and from these assessments, we get our PINs, or preference, interests, needs, and strengths. We also get from that, what are the students' goals in 3 areas: education, training, employment, and if appropriate, independent living. Once we've identified what the needs are, we provide specific transition services or activities, because the idea of addressing the needs is that we have the goal here, we have the student here, the student may have some needs. We need to provide some services that will address those needs, that will move them closer to what their goals are. And those services and activities can be, as you see here, instruction, related service, community experiences, and employment and adult living, daily living activities. Course of study is important, because what are the courses or the classes that the student needs to reach their post-secondary goal? And Amy talked about things like industry recognized credentials. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, because that's part of the course of study. Career tech education as well could be a part of that course of study that could help the student move towards their post-secondary goal. This is a graphic that maybe some of you have seen before. This is about person-centered planning, which is foundational to transition planning. We have in the middle who? It's the student. We need to work on annually. What are their preferences in those areas? What are their interests in those areas? What are their strengths? And what are their needs? And if we've identified needs, we have to provide services and activities that will target those specific needs. It's also all about backwards planning, okay? And we all do backwards planning every day. If you're going to take a trip somewhere, you're going to maybe go into MapQuest or Google Maps, and you're going to come up with, I want to get from here to here, Google Map it, get a list of directions. That's backwards planning. It's starting, where do I want to be? And then working back from there, what do I need to do each step of the way to get to my goal? So age-appropriate transition assessments is the foundation, again, of transition planning. And it can be a lot of things, but I want to make sure that you understand that parents can and should be partners in age-appropriate transition assessments. Again, the student's at the center, but you as the parent know your child better than anyone else. And you probably have a pretty good idea of what are their preferences, their interests, needs, and what are their strengths. So that's where the partnership comes in, of looking at this data, not just from what people see at school, but what you're seeing at home as well. So that's the foundation. From that, again, we get our pins, our preference, interests, needs, and strengths. So on the IEP, section 5 is that part of the IEP where transition is placed, okay? So when we talk about age-appropriate transition assessments, for each of the 3 areas, employment, independent living, and education and training, the box looks the same. It just says, this one says competitive integrated employment. But in section 5 of the IEP, there's 3 of these, each for a different area. This age-appropriate transition assessment, what you should be looking for with your team is, do we have a narrative in there? Do we have a narrative of what transition assessments have we used this year? When were they given? Who were they given by? And then what were the pins or preference, interests, needs, and strengths? So that's where that part goes when you're looking at an IEP. Measurable post-secondary goals are, again, one of those things that comes out of our AATA. So if I were to give someone an age-appropriate transition assessment for what it is that they want to do in employment, say we do an interest inventory, and it comes up with the interest inventory says that the student wants to be an auto mechanic. Well, that post-secondary goal for employment could be, after graduating from high school, Amy will work full-time or part-time as an auto technician. The post-secondary goal, this is a formula that we use when we look at writing our measurable post-secondary goals. It's always about what is the student going to do after graduation from high school. So what you should be seeing if you have students that are transition age is the name of the student after high school or upon graduation or completion of high school. The student, name of the student, will do what and where will they do it. It needs to be measurable, and the post-secondary goal has to be what will happen after graduation from high school. So this, again, from the IEP section 5, this is where you will find your measurable post-secondary goal for each of those 3 areas. So I mentioned transition services and activities. Again, these are just the different things that could be part of transition services and activities. If you identify a need, let's say that self-advocacy is a need that might be identified through your AATA. There could be a goal on there or an activity related to speech and language, where the SLP or speech and language pathologist will be working with the student on expressive language and role-playing, pragmatic language of being able to talk to other people, good eye contact, voice volume, things like that. So the services aren't always just what's happening with the classroom stuff. There can be other things that are going on, like related services, and maybe even referral to adult service agencies. Those could also be considered transition services, as long as they are addressing a need that is identified through your age-appropriate transition assessments. A little bit more about transition services and activities. Again, I know I'm being a little redundant here, but if there is a need identified, there needs to be a service or an activity. Now, sometimes there might be multiple needs that a student demonstrates, maybe so many that the team is going to have to prioritize. What do we want to work on? So if the team, the IEP team decides that we've got these 10 needs, but this year we're going to work on these 3, that's an IEP team decision. And this on your section 5 is where you will see the transition service or activity right here. One thing that's important to remember, when you see a transition service or an activity, it is not what the student will do. So it should never read that Billy will job shadow 3 business areas of interest. It is about what will be provided to the student. So Billy will be provided information and resources to be able to go and shadow 3 occupations of interest in the community. So remember that it's about what will be provided to the student, not necessarily, even though it's student outcome driven, it's not going to be what the student will do, it's what will be provided. And just a word on self-determination and self-advocacy. I just think it's really, really important that starting way before high school, and if I were to get on my little soapbox, I would say that I think transition planning really needs to start even earlier than 14. But starting early, really talking about self-advocacy and self-determination. The reason I have a life jacket as a graphic is I often feel like special education and special educators who are helping people that are going into the profession because they want to help students sometimes help a little too much. They're like a life jacket. And guess what? When you graduate from high school, that life jacket gets pulled away. So we want our students to be able to swim without a life jacket before they graduate from high school. So talk to your team about that. Again, you as parents know your kids the best. Work on goals and activities. If your child needs that, self-determination, self-advocacy, it's really important. And having your students attend their own IEP meetings and participating in them is really important as well. Again, there's a lot of links in this PowerPoint. So for instance, this is self-directed IEP, that when you get this presentation, it'll take you to that. So you'll be able to learn a little bit more about the self-directed IEP program. Course of study. Again, what courses will the student take that will move them towards their goal? So for instance, our student that wants to be an automotive technician, well, if there's a career tech program that offers automotive, that sure might be a good course of study for that student to be involved in, because that course of study is building those skills and working towards what it is the student wants to do after high school. And as you can see here from our graphic of the IEP, that simply goes in the box right here, the course of study. So like I said, Amy did an amazing job of setting up the graduation requirements. And I'll just reinforce one more time. It's about 3 things: course requirements, demonstrating competency, and demonstration of readiness. So you're probably wondering, why do I have these 2 black arrows pointing at demonstration of competency? Because quite often that is where students with IEPs are missing the opportunity with the new graduation requirements to graduate by standard requirements. Because now, if you are not a good test taker in the ELA 2 and Algebra 1 test, there are options available to demonstrate competency in a different way. And the state calls them alternate demonstrations of competency. I like to call them parallel, because I think alternate sort of implies that they're second class, and they're really not. So Amy had already shared this with you. You know about the competency alternatives. I want to talk more about the career readiness ones, because for many students with IEPs, that is probably the best pathway to demonstrate competency. So, and I'm speaking in broad generalizations here. If a student is not able, after taking and receiving remediation, to pass these Ohio State tests in Algebra 1 and English Language Arts 2, It's probably going to be a stretch to think that they would pass a college level class in those areas. It would also probably be a stretch to think that if they don't pass those tests, that they would receive a remediation-free score on the SAT or ACT. And again, I'm speaking in broad generalizations, but I like to focus, and my partner, Angie Chappell at the state support team, she and I have really been working with our districts to talk about this career readiness competency parallel demonstration. Quick drink of coffee. Okay, so Amy had mentioned before, showing competency, the parallel demonstration. There are, and this is the career focused one, this option one, okay? So we have the foundational bucket and we have the supporting bucket of things students would have to do to demonstrate competency. The first one is getting a proficient score on the web exam. And basically web exams are the end of course exams for career technical education programs. Or the student in the foundational could earn a 12-point industry recognized credential. This is something I'm going to share a little bit more about, or be in a registered pre-apprenticeship or an approved apprenticeship program. Then from supporting one of these three things, work-based learning, which I'm going to share a little bit more about because I find this to be a very viable pathway for students that might struggle with passing those tests. The Work Keys exam, those are something that are more part of career tech. Or again, here's the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. I'm going to share a little bit more with on that and build on what Amy had shared already. So industry recognized credentials. If anyone has a driver's license, you have an industry recognized credential. If you have ever taken an American Heart Association CPR or first aid class, you have earned an industry recognized credential. In Ohio, we have 13 what are called 13 career clusters. This title up here, industry recognized credential, when you get the presentation, you can click on that link and it'll take you to the page on the Ohio Department of Education website that'll show you all the different credentials that are in each of these 13 career clusters. Our work at the SST has been to develop a list of industry recognized credentials that we consider doable, meaning that some of them do not require a test at the end. Some of them might be project-based, where a student would do a project to earn that credential. So it is possible for many, many students to be able to earn 12 points of industry recognized credentials in one of these 13 areas. Okay, you've seen this one already before, right? My mantra, Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal for all. There is no reason why every student cannot earn this seal. Amy had talked about the professional skills. There are 14 of them here, and the student takes a drug-free pledge. The important thing with all of these things, these can start in 9th grade. Students can start working towards industry recognized credentials in 9th grade. Students can start working towards earning the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal in 9th grade. So I think it's really important if your student is in 8th grade and they struggle with tests, that's an indication that they might struggle with those Ohio State tests as well. You need to talk with your team about, let's not wait until they take the test and they don't pass it. Let's start building these different things in 9th grade. Let's start working on the readiness seal. Let's start pursuing industry recognized credentials, because if they do pass the test, great. They've got even a better portfolio when they graduate. But if they don't, or if they're in danger of not passing those high stakes tests, then we've got our safety net here in place with these different demonstrations of competency. Amy shared the same slide, okay? There is a rubric. And so things like punctuality, just an example. If your student is part of a club and they show up to that club on time every day, they have demonstrated proficiency for punctuality. Teamwork and collaboration. If your student, let's say faith-based organization, coffee hour every week, your student is helping to set up for coffee hour every single week, that's a demonstration of proficiency. And you would have somebody at that faith-based organization sign off. There's a form that would get signed off that that person would say, yeah, they're demonstrating teamwork and collaboration. So as Amy said before, it doesn't have to be just in school. It can be in the community. It could be at work. So we need to think outside of the box when we look at these different areas of those professional skills, because I think a lot of students are developing those skills. They may just not be in a school or an employment environment. Career technical education well, federally, there's a federal legislation. It's called Perkins 5, which oversees and regulates how career tech education happens in every state. Equity and access to career technical education is a priority in the Perkins 5 legislation. Every school district in Ohio is part of a career tech planning district. So for instance, you live in South Euclid, you're part of the Mayfield Excel Tech Career Tech Planning District. If you're out in, let's say, Lake County and you live in, or let's say out in Geauga County, you're in Chardon, you're part of the Auburn Career Tech Planning District. And as I've said, the focus and the priority is on getting more students with disabilities into career tech programs. So that is a question that needs to be pursued as part of your planning, as part of the graduation planning with your student. What career tech programs might be accessible to my student that would be a good fit for what their measurable post-secondary goal might be. The career tech programs basically are, there's 16 different career pathways. And again, when you get the presentation, I'm always reluctant to click on these links while I'm doing this presentation because I'm afraid I won't be able to get back in my PowerPoint. But you can see for each of these 16 different career pathway areas, there are career tech programs that are being offered. So it's really important to think about maybe career tech as an option, because again, remember with those web exams for career tech, if your student is proficient on those web exams, that's a demonstration of competency. Okay, work-based learning. If you go back and remember the career-focused parallel demonstration of competency, we've got the foundational stuff and then the supporting. Work-based learning is one of those supporting areas. Essentially what work-based learning is starting in 9th grade, if a student has 250 hours of work-based learning, basically what that is there's a work-based learning agreement that gets completed by the student, the school, the parent, and a business member of the community that outlines what their work experience will be and what skills they will develop through that work-based learning. If you have a job training coordinator program that your student is getting work credit for, there should be a work-based learning agreement that will document the skills that they're working on while they work. And like I say, it's from 9th grade on to work 250 hours. the beautiful thing about work-based learning, and Ohio is really trying to make work-based learning a priority, is that it just isn't about a job. Work-based learning could be volunteer work. It could be a school-based enterprise, as you can see from this slide. It could be entrepreneurship. School-based enterprise. I know a lot of schools have, they've set up like coffee kiosks and things like that, where the students are, serving coffee, or they're working at some sort of job within the school. That's a school-based enterprise. There should be a work-based learning agreement. They don't have to be getting paid for work-based learning hours to count towards the 250 hours. It can be non-paid as well. So talk to your team about, hey, what's work-based learning? I want to know more about that, because Ohio has made it very broad how students can earn those 250 hours of work-based learning. And again, that's part of those demonstrations of competency. So the other thing that's really exciting in Ohio is that an organization called Think College has partnered with a number of Ohio universities to create what are called comprehensive transition programs. And basically, if a program at a post-secondary institution, like Kent State, I think they probably have one of the older comprehensive transition programs in the country, in Ohio for sure. If they are registered with Think College and they are designing their comprehensive transition programs, focusing on preparation for the world of work, preparation for independent living, preparation for more independence in the community, they become a registered Think College comprehensive transition program. And students with disabilities that enroll in those programs are eligible for the same types of financial aid that other students might get that aren't in those programs, Pell Grants and things like that. So I'm going to take a risk here real quick. I am going to click on that link. Okay. Hopefully you can still see this. I know sometimes when I switch, if you can't see it, somebody unmute and tell me, but these are the different colleges. Oh, thanks, Amy. In Ohio that offer comprehensive transition programs. Some of them are different than others. Many of them have residential on campus. Some of them don't. But if your student is interested in having that college experience, you may want to check out some of these comprehensive transition programs. I do know that another university that is in our area may soon become the next comprehensive transition planning program site, and that's all I'm going to say. But I'm excited about what I think is going to happen. So these are some programs that you may want to check out if you're looking at giving a college experience to your student, or if that's what they want. Okay, good. It didn't go away. All right. So what are some important considerations? These are the big takeaways, at least for me. Start early, kindergarten. Start talking about careers. Start developing a career awareness in your student. What does it mean to go to work every day? Talk about your job if you have a job. Talk about what you like about your job and what you don't like about your job. So as much as you can start talking about careers and things like that, the younger, the better. Getting students thinking about work and making some connections as they start to get a little bit older of, gee, I really like to do this, okay? Maybe this is a job that I may want to do. Talk about career clusters. You know, some students say, well, I want to be a doctor. Okay, that's great. That may be realistic, it may not. But that doctor, that's in the medical or the healthcare career clusters. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of different jobs that do not maybe require, 1,000 years of education like it takes to become a doctor. Many industry recognized credentials, like Amy had shared, that state tested nursing assistant, the STNA, 12-point industry recognized credentials, that's in the healthcare field. And that might be a good fit for a student. Make every effort that you can that your child has access to the general education curriculum. One of the reasons I believe that Ohio has such a low number or percentage of students with disabilities graduating by standard requirements is I think that we have too many students in self-contained classes. We need to make sure that our students are able to access the general ed curriculum with support going with them to make sure that their academic needs are met in more of a general education type of environment. If you're in Cuyahoga County, we're very fortunate. And I learned this when I started my job at State Support Team 3 a couple years ago. I just figured every county, every school district had a transition coordinator or transition specialist. In Cuyahoga County, not every single district has one of these people, but a lot of them do. Most of them do. Start to ask early, who's our transition specialist? Do we have a transition specialist? Because they're the ones that will assist you and your child in navigating secondary transition planning, matching those pins to those post-secondary goals. I don't think it's too early to ask transition specialists and coordinators, if your district has one, to start attending IEP meetings when your student or child is in middle school. So ask the question, do we have one? Who is it? Can we have that person come to my child's IEP in 7th grade or in 8th grade? Because I think the sooner you get to know who those people are and the sooner they get to know you and your student, the smoother that secondary transition planning is going to be. Backwards planning. Where are we heading and what gaps need to be filled? So talking about the long range goal, where does my student want to be? Okay, this is where you want to be. What do we need to do? What skills do we need to build to get you there? I'm in 8th grade. I want to be an auto mechanic. Okay, have you, worked with tools and things like that? Well, no. Okay, let's see. Do we have an industrial arts class? Do we have a class where maybe my student can get some more experience working with those types of things or those tools? So filling those gaps by finding services and activities that address them. Amy did a great job of talking about graduation plans. By law, every student starting in 9th grade has to have a graduation plan. Yes, it can be the IEP. I wrestle with that because I think the IEP can be kind of cumbersome for all of those. There's required areas that have to be in a graduation plan. Yes, they can be in the IEP. They can be present level of performance and in the transition plan in those areas. But I don't, I would advocate for an actual graduation plan for my child. And those plans, as Amy said, they're updated annually. And if you notice when Amy was sharing, they always start with, what is my goal? That's the very first thing on those graduation plans, as it should be for all students. How will my child demonstrate competency? Again, if you believe that your son or daughter is at risk of maybe not being able to pass those ELA 2, the English Language Arts 2, or the Algebra 1 test, start talking about those other demonstrations of competency in 9th grade. What credential programs do we have? How can we start work-based learning? Can we start working on the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal? And even if you don't worry about your student not passing those tests, still ask those questions because it builds a strong portfolio and gives your student more skills, more strengths, more employability skills as they look to exit high school. So I just said that, when should we start looking at alternate demonstrations as early as possible. Do not wait until the child takes the test and doesn't pass the test after remediation and retake. Ask the question about the readiness seal. Amy talked about the twofers. I love that. That Ohio Means Jobs, that'll check a box in competency, that'll check a box in readiness. So start to have those conversations. Hey, how can we start working towards earning some readiness seals? Which ones do we want to look at? You can start early with those as well. Can't say it enough. Ohio Means Jobs readiness seal. That is one that is my favorite because we hear a lot of employers say, I don't care if they can do the actual job, but I want them to come with these positive work behaviors. I'll show them how to do the job, but I want them to show up on time. I want them to get along with other people. I want them to be reliable and to have some technology skills. And then ask the question, what about career technical education? Like I said, every high school in Ohio is part of a career tech planning district. So you have access to career technical education. And with the Perkins 5 legislation, barriers are being removed that have sometimes kept students that struggle out of career tech programs. So have those conversations about career tech education. Okay, that was a lot. We want to thank you for being with us here tonight, taking your time this evening. Amy Clausen, I will stop my sharing. That is the end of our PowerPoint presentation, and
Very, very well done, both of you. Thank you so much for all of this information. It was a lot, however, it's necessary, right? And it was produced in a way that is understandable, so we really appreciate this. So I know that we do have some questions ready in the chat, and some Amy has been answering in the chat too, so that's awesome. So Wendy and Laurie, do you have a beginning question for the team to answer?
I'm going through right now. I think the first question was, my son is almost 4 years post graduation. So will these requirements still apply to him?
I did answer that in the chat. You have to check with your school because if his typical graduation was supposed to be, for example, 2018, he should be following the 2018 graduations if that's what the school and the IEP team has decided. So that's, you have to go back to your IEP team and talk about what year of graduation requirements is your child trying to attain, because it's going to be dependent on what has been decided with that team.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it, Amy. It's whatever their 4-year graduation cohort was. So if they started 2014, the 2014-2015 school year, what would that be? They would be a graduating class of 2019, right? That would be 4 years. It would be whatever the graduation requirements were for that particular year.
I'll take the next one. Derek asked, I think this is directed toward some of Amy's slides, how to find a mentor. I believe you had mentioned finding mentors.
Yes, and so it could be if they're involved in faith-based groups, if they're, in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, if they are part of any kind of community organization where they're being able to exhibit work readiness skills. Those are considered to be mentors. If you have none right now, there's usually a transition coordinator that exists in your schools that can help connect and make placements for those. Within the school setting, there should be one mentor that's available. And then all you would have to do is either find one that's work-based or one that's community-based. And oftentimes people are already involved in activities and things that that mentor could be selected from.
Thank you.
Another question that came through is, do charter schools set their own rules for graduation requirements?
I'll let you take that one, Bob, because I'm not 100% on that.
Right, yeah. Charter schools are considered public schools, so they have been given some flexibility in how they offer credits. But yes, they also follow the same graduation requirements, the same accountability measures that your more typical schools would follow. They are considered public schools. The ones that maybe wouldn't would be some of the educational programs. You're probably familiar with Monarch, programs like that. That would be a different type of situation. I was kind of going through the chat, and it seems like there are a lot of questions related to young people that have graduated already. I've seen a few of those, and one of the things I would say is that if your son or daughter has not gotten eligible for services through Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities or County Boards of Developmental Disabilities, if they're eligible, I know that they do offer some vocational evaluations and support. So I would encourage, if your son or daughter has already graduated and accepted their diploma, trying to get connected with those agencies to get some assistance.
I see another question about postponing graduation. My autistic high school senior wants to go to a 2-year college, but will be too overwhelmed for her to carry a full load. Even being at the college tour was too sensory overwhelming. Can we defer her diploma, have her take 1 or 2 CCP classes at college, or take them but continue to receive speech and intervention support from our local high school?
That's a good question. That really is going to come down to your IEP team. You know, again, with the big push on students graduating by standard requirements, if a student has met all of the things that they need to do to get a diploma and graduate by standard requirements, that's great. But then the next thing is, have they met their transition goals? And then that's when the team has to say, well, they've met everything, but they've not met their transition goals. So the team would have to determine if additional services, you know, would be appropriate before handing off the diploma.
Thank you. We get asked that a lot all the time. So that's a really good reminder of how to approach that situation. Bob, thanks.
I'll give you some breaking news too that might help with questions like that. The Ohio Department of Education Office for Exceptional Children is like 2 minutes away from releasing a graduation decision-making tool that I think is really going to help with questions like that. It's in the works, but it really helps teams, IEP teams, answer questions like that. It's sort of similar to, if any of you have had kids that are doing alternate assessment, they're the alternate assessment decision-making tool that came out to determine whether it's appropriate or not for alternate assessment. Same thing's coming out for teams to use with, is the student ready to graduate or not? So stay tuned for that. Amy, as soon as that comes
Perfect.
out, I'll make sure you know.
Please do. That would be very helpful. Thank you. Another question from Derek, is there an IEP equivalent our children can take to post-high school schools?
An IEP so Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities has an individual plan for improvement, an IPE. The county boards have an ISP, individual service plan. So I know that universities and colleges and most that, well, all that receive federal funds, which is most of them, have to offer services. The difference between what you see in high school and what you see in most post-secondary education environments is that specially designed instruction is sort of a hallmark of an IEP. It's more accommodations if you're looking at college or universities. But, you know, I know, like I teach part-time at Cleveland State, and I've talked with the coordinator of disabled student services there. Basically, what they want is you to come with your data, an ETR, an IEP, and then they meet with with your student because they're 18 and older, assuming that, and talk about, okay, here are the accommodations that we could offer. Most will not, well, none of them will modify their curriculum. They don't do that in post-secondary, but you will find accommodations. Hope that answers that question.
Sure does. Thank you.
Here's another question. My daughter did not score high enough in math and English state test last year, which was her sophomore year. She has state testing again in December. My daughter's grades are A's and B's, but she does not test well. She is in a technical school and is doing work-based learning. She has a driver's license. How can she get a CPR for a credit? What other things can she get a credit for?
I would work with your IEP team to see if there's industry credentials available in their school. Different schools have different programs set up where they can do a leadership, where they might be getting, for example, Riverside has a business management industry credential, and students go through a process of, and while they're younger, getting a leadership of excellence, the CPR, and then they go in and do some other coursework. So it's really important to connect with your high school and find out what industry credentials are available through their programming, and then what is available through your local career center, because there's some things that might be available there. Bob, you were going to say something as well.
Yeah, no, I was pretty much going to say what you said, Amy, that industry recognized credentials have been part of career tech for a long time. The work that we've been doing is creating credential programs that are not offered through career tech. They're school-based. One of the big popular ones in Ohio are the National Retail Federation. They're called Rise Up, and they have retail fundamentals. That's a 6-point credential. And then customer service, that's a 6-point credential. So, you know, you do the math, there's 12. And I know a lot of schools have looked at bringing those credential programs either as like a standalone or integrating it into a course that's at the school. Like if they have a marketing class or a business class, offering those credentials through those classes.
And those
Oh.
are online, that usually there's a monitor or a supervisor that's connected to them at the school, but the actual credentials are earned online. But generally, it is a program. It's not like you can't go get the CPR, you can't go get the OSHA and it's pieced together. It does have to be a full program so that at the end, there's something that they can attain. Has to be coordinated.
Yeah,
And
for
you're-
sure.
I see
Very
another
good.
question in the chat. It's very general, so I'm not sure. What are the agencies we can connect for those who have already graduated from high school? Can you please put links in the chat? I'm not sure specifically what we're looking for in that, but
Wendy, I gave Derek OOD's website. Bob and
I-
Amy, are there more?
I put OOD in the chat too. I dropped it in the chat. OOD, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And remember, their focus is on employment. And then the other adult service agency would be your county board. There we go. Derek's already checking it already. So excellent. Good. Would be your county board of developmental disabilities, which, is OOD is more short term. Too. One of the things that OOD is starting to have too, I know somebody was looking or asking about college programs, is that they have created a program called College to Careers, where they actually have OOD counselors on campus that are assisting in supports for students that may need it. So that's another exciting thing that's happening.
Very good. And I
Yeah.
know we're out of time, but this one question will be our last, you guys. I want to thank everybody for joining and thank our wonderful speakers. But Marie wants to know if the high school diploma is deferred, the student walks with normal graduating class. But for resume purposes, what year would the student put down for the year of graduation? The year she gets her diploma? Or the year she walked?
I would say that that's I would check with the school because different schools might make that local decision a little different. I've seen it most of the time where it's the year that they actually graduate, but there are some schools, depending on how they did their diplomas and what time they had them done. And but my top of the head answer would be, whatever year that they're actually getting the diploma, and the diploma will have the date on it.
That's true.
That I agree. That we've had some companies that would say that, well, they need to have a high school diploma.
Mhm.
Well, if they did the social graduation, they may not have it yet. So many schools would be willing to write a letter on letterhead that says that so-and-so has completed graduation requirements on this, they've completed their requirements on this date. So.
Good tip. That's a really good idea also. All right, well, it is 8:34. I'm so glad that everyone joined us tonight. We hope you enjoyed it and got a lot from it. Again, we'll send an email out once the PowerPoints are uploaded to the Ohio F2F website, along with any additional resources. And thank you to Bob and Amy. You were both very wonderful and so informative. We're glad you joined us for the evening. So we will pause
Thanks
for the
for having
evening
us.
and thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Amy, just one quick thing, if you could hold on after everyone leaves.
Okay.
I just, for when you're sharing the PowerPoint, I just wanted to add one thing.
I'm jumping off then. Okay, have a good night, you
Bob, is
guys.
it, is the, if you want to stop the recording.